My mother pushed my boyfriend to marry my sister, claiming she was better for him. I was devastated. So I left everything behind to start a new life. Hello and welcome to today's story. Are you a first-time viewer, or have you just returned for another exciting tale? Either way, I'm glad you're here. And hey, if you enjoy what you hear today, please help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support will keep me motivated to bring more amazing stories to you. Now, let's dive into today's story. Imagine being in a position where the people you love most, the ones who should be supporting you, betray you. Have you ever faced something like this? Felt abandoned or overlooked, when all you wanted was to be seen? Stay with me until the end of the story and see how our character overcomes these challenges and finds their true path. Let's get started. It was a crisp evening in the heart of Verona City, a place known for its rich history of art, culture, and legacy. For years, I lived under the shadow of my family's expectations, always trying to measure up. My name is Ava, and I am an artist not just in the sense of creating paintings, but in how I saw the world through layers of color, texture, and meaning. My work was personal, but my family never really understood it. They valued status, achievement, and titles. My older sister, Isabella, was everything I was not. She was practical, focused, and always knew how to play the game of life. She was studying law at a prestigious university, and in the eyes of my mother, Isabella was destined for greatness. My mother, Althea, was a woman of ambition and tradition. Her life focused on connections and power. I often felt like I was a disappointment, like I would never quite be enough in her eyes. Then came Luca. He was the one person who truly saw me, who appreciated my art, my soul. For 3 years, we had a beautiful relationship, one where I felt seen and loved for who I truly was. But everything changed one fateful evening at a gathering. Luca had gone to fetch us some drinks at a graduation party for my cousin, but when he didn't return, I decided to look for him. What I saw behind the kitchen door shattered me. Luca was talking to Isabella. They were laughing a little too comfortably. My mother was there too, encouraging him. Isabella has always been the achiever, Luca. She's got the potential to move forward. Ava, on the other hand, is just a dreamer and artist. You deserve someone who will push you higher. My heart sank. I backed away, my hands trembling. It wasn't just the betrayal of my partner, it was the betrayal of my own family. My mother had convinced Luca to pursue a future with Isabella. She thought Isabella was stronger, better for him. I stood there, feeling small, suffocated, like an artist whose canvas was ripped apart before even finishing the first stroke. I was devastated, unable to comprehend how the people I loved the most could push me aside so easily. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my chest. And the worst part wasn't just the actions of my mother and sister. It was the realization that they never really saw me for who I was. They saw an artist, sure, but they didn't see the passion, the dedication, the long hours I spent honing my craft. They saw a dreamer, a fragile soul, too impractical to succeed in the real world. And the man I thought I could trust, Luca, who had once promised to stand by me, seemed no different from the rest. It was as though he too had been convinced by their logic, by the idea that Isabella was the better choice. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay in Verona. I couldn't breathe under the suffocating expectations of my family, the stifling weight of their disappointment. So I left, packed up what little I had, left behind the places that had once felt like home, and drove away without looking back. I didn't know exactly where I was going, only that I needed space to figure out who I was without them hovering over me. I found myself in Astral Bay, a coastal city known for its vibrant art scene, its eclectic mix of artists, tech innovators, and entrepreneurs. It was a place where people didn't ask what your family did or what your pedigree was. Here, they asked only what you created. I was drawn to it instantly, the way the city seemed to pulse with possibility. I rented a small, rundown apartment in an old building near the water. Its windows cracked but letting in just enough sunlight to warm the small space. At night, I could hear the waves crashing against the shore, a constant reminder of the world outside that never stopped moving, even when I felt stuck in my own pain. The beginning was tough, very tough. I spent my days wandering the streets of Astral Bay, seeking inspiration. The city was full of art galleries, street murals, pop-up exhibitions. It was like being submerged in a living, breathing art installation, a place where everyone had a story to tell. but I didn't feel like part of the narrative. I felt like an outsider, like a ghost passing through, trying to find my place in a world that seemed to have no room for me. I worked part-time at a local gallery, dusting shelves, setting up exhibitions, doing the kind of grunt work no one else wanted to do. It didn't pay well, but it allowed me to stay in the city I hoped would offer me a new beginning. I spent the rest of my time in the corner of a cafe, sketching and painting, working through my emotions one brushstroke at a time. It was the only thing that kept me grounded. My heart still ached from the betrayal, the raw wound never quite healing. But with each piece of art I created, I felt a small sense of control return. My paintings started to change, too. They became darker, more intense, reflecting the pain I couldn't verbalize. The colors on the canvas bled into one another, chaotic but somehow beautiful. I poured my soul into my work, and little by little, people began to notice. My first exhibition in Astral Bay was small, a community event held in a rundown warehouse space near the harbor. It was the kind of event where everyone knew everyone, and I felt like a stranger walking in. But I was determined. I had to show them that I was more than just a woman with a broken heart. I was an artist and I deserved to be seen. The night of the exhibition, my nerves were shot. I stood in the corner, awkwardly watching as people wandered through the space, commenting on my work. Some of them paused to take in the details, others moved quickly, uninterested. I felt exposed, like every flaw, every imperfection in my art was being dissected. But then something happened. A man in a sharp suit walked over to one of my paintings. He studied it for a moment, his brows furrowed in concentration. Then he turned to me, and I felt my heart skip a beat. "Who's the artist?" he asked, his voice calm but assertive. "I am," I said, almost in a whisper. He nodded, his eyes flicking back to the canvas. "I can see it. This piece, there's something raw here. Something unpolished, but powerful." I wasn't sure what to say. My first instinct was to brush it off, to apologize for the mess I had created. But instead, I stood still, allowing myself to bask in the compliment. That was the moment I realized something. I was finally being seen, not as someone else's idea of what I should be, but as the artist I had always wanted to become. The man was Ethan, a businessman with a sharp eye for investment opportunities in the arts. He wasn't like Luca, with his romantic ideals or empty promises. He didn't offer me soft words or false assurances. He saw the value in my work, but more importantly, he saw the potential in me as someone who could help grow a business that aimed to support sustainable art ventures. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of Ethan. He wasn't part of the typical art scene. He didn't care about trends or highbrow galleries. He wanted to shake things up. He wanted to disrupt the traditional art world, integrating art with technology to create something that felt more dynamic, more immersive. The idea intrigued me even if I wasn't sure I was ready for it. But there was something about his drive, the way he spoke about his vision, that made me want to be part of it. Ethan's company was in the process of developing a project that would integrate interactive installations into public spaces. They aimed to create art that could engage audiences on a deeper level, using augmented reality and virtual reality to blur the lines between the physical and digital worlds. It was ambitious, but it felt right for someone like me. I had spent so many years trying to be accepted in the traditional art world, but here was an opportunity to do something entirely different. Something that could break down barriers and reach people in ways that were far more meaningful. We began working together, my art becoming a central piece of the project. At first, it was just small things, designing visual concepts, creating prototypes for some of the installations, but soon it became clear that I was more than just a collaborator. I was part of something bigger. Ethan's vision for the future of art was something I could get behind, and perhaps for the first time since I had left Verona, I began to feel like I was exactly where I needed to be. Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. It was a leap of faith, but I joined him. Ethan and I, with our shared vision and determination, began laying the foundation for something I had never imagined, a new company focused on sustainable art practices and creating accessible platforms for artists who were often overlooked by the mainstream. We were on the edge of a movement, one that sought to redefine what art could be, blending creativity with technology in ways that had never been done before. The road, however, was anything but easy. Starting a business was grueling. and at times it felt like the world was working against us. We encountered financial struggles almost immediately. The initial excitement of our idea was quickly overshadowed by the harsh reality of running a business. We had no investors at first, and our resources were limited. Every dollar had to be stretched, every decision scrutinized. We faced misunderstandings with artists and potential collaborators who were skeptical about our unconventional approach. Many didn't see the value in fusing technology with art. For them, it was a breach of tradition, an affront to the purity of the art form. But I didn't back down. I worked tirelessly, pouring my energy into the projects. I spent sleepless nights drafting business plans, securing collaborations, and reaching out to other artists who might share our vision. Ethan and I worked side by side, often burning the midnight oil in our tiny office, trying to figure out the logistics of each project. I started teaching workshops for young artists, showing them the ropes of navigating the challenges I had faced in my own journey. Those workshops became a lifeline, not just for the artists who attended, but for me as well. Teaching was a way to reclaim the power I had lost in my previous life, a reminder that I was still capable of giving, still capable of building something meaningful. Through the workshops, I helped others connect with their creativity just as I had done for myself years ago. The bond between Ethan and I grew stronger as the months passed. It wasn't just a professional relationship. It became something more personal. Ethan respected my creativity and I admired his vision and discipline. He wasn't an artist, but he understood the importance of nurturing the creative process. He didn't try to box me in, and he always pushed me to think bigger. He had this way of making me feel like nothing was impossible, that no challenge was too great. And that feeling of not being limited, of having the space to truly explore what art could be, was liberating. It was what I had needed all along. Together, we navigated the complexities of the business world, slowly earning recognition. We made strategic moves to collaborate with museums, tech companies, and universities. These partnerships allowed us to bring our art to new audiences, and more importantly, they provided us with the validation we had so desperately needed. Our projects were displayed in galleries and public spaces, and the buzz surrounding our work started to grow. Slowly but surely, the company began to find its footing. But as much as the company was growing, there was still something inside me that lingered, a quiet, persistent ache that I couldn't shake off. The success, the accolades, the recognition, none of it could fully fill the hole that had been left by my family's betrayal. The pain of that day, when I had learned that my own mother and sister had pushed me aside for someone else, never truly disappeared. It didn't scream at me anymore, but it lingered in the background. Like a dull hum I couldn't quite tune out. I thought about them from time to time. The way my mother had looked at me with such disappointment, as though I were a failure. The way Isabella had moved on so easily, choosing to stand by our mother's side rather than supporting me in my time of need. Sometimes I wondered what they would think if they saw me now. Would they recognize the person I had become? Would they see me as a success, or would they still view me as the same girl who had been too idealistic, too focused on art instead of real work? The questions haunted me, not because I wanted their approval, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that part of me still craved it. As the months turned into a year, and the company continued to grow, I began to realize something important. I had built this new life on my own terms. But the remnants of the past, of my family's rejection, were still there. Buried deep inside me, waiting to surface when I least expected it. There were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable, when I doubted whether I was truly as strong as I appeared to be. I would walk through the halls of our office, watch the team we had built come together, and feel a wave of pride and joy, but there were also moments when I'd catch myself wondering if my success was enough to make up for what I had lost. One day, as I sat alone in my office, reflecting on how far we had come, I received a message from an old acquaintance, a former art professor from back in Verona. He had heard about the work Ethan and I were doing and wanted to meet. The message caught me off guard, and for a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to move on and forget about the world I had left behind. But there was another part of me that wanted to face it head-on, to show them that I had made something of myself. So I agreed to meet him. When we sat down in the cafe, he didn't start with pleasantries. Instead, he cut right to the chase. "I heard about your company," he said, his voice a mix of awe and curiosity. You've done something few could have imagined, bringing together art and technology in such a meaningful way. But I have to ask, did you do this to prove something to the people who left you behind? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized it, but there it was, right in front of me. Had I been building this company, this life, as a way to show my family they were wrong about me? A small part of me admitted it. But the larger part of me, the part that had fought so hard to make this a reality, knew better. No, I replied, my voice steady. I didn't do this to prove anything to anyone. I did it because it's who I am. I built something meaningful, and that's enough. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. Good, he said. Because the art you're creating is far bigger than any family drama or past disappointment. It's about something deeper, something that resonates with people in ways they don't always understand. Keep pushing forward. His words stayed with me long after we parted ways. They echoed in my mind as I walked back to our office, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, I had been hurt by the people I loved most. Yes, the past still haunted me from time to time. But I was finally beginning to see that I wasn't building this life for them. I was building it for me, for the artist I had always been, for the person I was becoming. The truth was, the pain of my family's betrayal would never fully disappear, but it no longer defined me. I had built something beautiful, something that was mine. And that, I realized, was the truest form of redemption. The breakthrough came when Ethan suggested we host a gala to celebrate our company's growth. It wasn't just any gala. This event was going to showcase everything we had built. Our vision, our art, our journey. We wanted to introduce our work to potential investors, the art community, and anyone who might share our passion for sustainable art. It was a chance to not only elevate our brand, but also to stand on a stage that acknowledged the struggle we'd been through, the risks we'd taken, and the success we'd earned. But there was something else behind the idea, a personal reason for me. A way to face my past. I had spent so many years in Verona under the shadow of family expectations, constantly trying to prove that my path was valid, that my art mattered. This gala was more than a celebration of our business. It was a chance for me to confront the ghosts of my past, the family I had left behind, the ones who had dismissed me and my dreams. It was a way to show them, not through words, but through my accomplishments, that I had become someone worth acknowledging. I hadn't seen my family since I left Verona. It had been years, and every part of me thought I was finally free from their judgment, but I knew they would be in town for the event. My mother, Isabella, and Luca, though I hadn't spoken to any of them since the night of the betrayal. The night I had overheard their words, the night they convinced Luca that my sister, Isabella, was the stronger choice. I had tried to move on from that day, tried to bury the pain, but it still lingered. And now, they were about to walk into a room where I would stand in the center of everything we had built. A success in my own right. Ethan understood my hesitation. He had seen the way my eyes clouded over whenever I thought of them. This isn't about revenge, Ava, he said gently, placing his hand on mine as we stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. This is about showing them who you are now. This is about showing you who you've become. You don't need their approval to know your worth. I nodded, taking in his words. But I wasn't sure I entirely believed them. Could I ever stop craving their approval? Could I ever fully release the desire to be seen by them? To be validated by the very people who had once dismissed me so easily? The thought made my chest tighten, but I pushed it aside, telling myself this night wasn't about them. It was about me. About us and the company we had built together. The night of the gala arrived, and as I stood at the entrance of the grand hall, I could feel the weight of the evening pressing down on me. The space was magnificent, gleaming marble floors, tall windows offering a stunning view of the skyline, and walls adorned with the works we had showcased over the last few months. The guests were milling about, chatting excitedly, admiring the art. But my attention wasn't on them. My heart raced as I scanned the crowd, looking for familiar faces, their familiar faces. And there they were. My mother in a sharp black dress, looking just as elegant and poised as I remembered. Isabella, standing beside her, her posture flawless, her smile tight, as though she were carefully crafting the perfect image. And Luca, looking impossibly handsome, just as I remembered him, standing with a glass of champagne in his hand. Chatting with someone from the art world. They hadn't changed much. Not in the ways that mattered anyway. But I had. I was no longer the girl they had dismissed. I was a successful artist. A businesswoman with a purpose, and I was proud of it. I didn't approach them immediately. I wanted them to see me, to notice how far I had come on my own terms. I wanted them to see that I was no longer someone to be pitied or belittled. I wanted them to know that I had done this on my own, without their approval, without their guidance. Ethan stood beside me, his presence solid and steady. He could feel my unease, but he didn't push me to act any faster. He simply gave my hand a reassuring squeeze and let me take the time I needed. Eventually, it was my mother who approached first. I saw her from across the room, her gaze locking with mine. Her smile was still the same. Practiced, polished. But there was a flicker of something else there, something I hadn't expected. Perhaps regret? Or maybe just a realization that the woman she saw in front of her was no longer the girl she had controlled. "Ava," she said, her voice smooth, the same sweetness she had always used when she wanted something from me. "You look impressive." Her words were measured, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the faint unease in her eyes. I smiled politely, my lips curving just enough to show appreciation but not submission. "Thank you, Mother. I've worked hard for this." Her eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly masked it with another smile, her posture regaining its usual air of superiority. "I'm sure you have," she replied, the words almost too formal. There was no apology. No recognition of the years lost between us, but that was never her way. I could see the weight of her pride, the one thing that had always been at the core of her, the need to maintain control, to appear flawless. But in that moment, I didn't need her validation. I had already earned mine. It was then that Luca noticed who I was standing next to, Ethan, my partner, my equal. I watched as his eyes widened, the shock clear in his expression as he registered what was happening. He had always known me as someone who was easy to overlook, someone who would always be a little bit behind in the grand scheme of things. But standing there with Ethan, I wasn't that girl anymore. Luca didn't say much. In fact, he didn't say anything at all. His gaze shifted between Ethan and me, and I could feel the shift in him, the unspoken realization that I had moved on, that I had achieved something he never thought possible for someone like me. There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment, just recognition. And in that moment, I understood that his silence spoke volumes. He knew what had happened. He knew who I had become. Isabella stood at a distance, observing the exchange. Her gaze was harder to read. Unlike Luca, who was caught off guard by my transformation, Isabella was always a master of control. She didn't show her emotions easily, not like me, but I could sense the shift in her too. She saw what I had built, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something close to respect in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the evening wore on, the gala continued, but I found myself increasingly detached from the crowd. The moment of confrontation, the moment of proving myself, had passed. I didn't need to continue seeking approval from them. The recognition I had longed for wasn't going to come from them. It was something I had already given myself. And in that realization, I found peace. Ethan and I moved through the crowd, greeting guests, speaking with investors, and discussing future collaborations. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but reflect on the significance of the night. I had faced my past not with anger, but with quiet strength. I had shown them, not through words, but through my presence, that I was more than they ever thought I could be. And that, I realized, was the most powerful form of redemption. The rest of the night was a blur, laughter, conversation, recognition. But for me, it was the moment I realized I no longer needed their approval. I had finally let go. And in doing so, I had found the freedom I had been searching for all along. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. Later that evening, I found myself standing next to Ethan as we spoke with potential investors. The glow from the chandeliers cast a soft light on the polished marble floors, and the hum of conversations filled the grand hall. Ethan was effortlessly charming, engaging in thoughtful discussions about the future of our company, always with that calm demeanor that I had come to admire. His presence, steady and reassuring, kept me grounded as I navigated the sea of handshakes, introductions, and fleeting pleasantries. But I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that lingered in the back of my mind. I knew they were here. My family, my mother, Isabella, and Luca, though I hadn't spoken to any of them since the night everything had shattered. I couldn't help but wonder how they would react to seeing me now. I had spent so many years hoping for their approval, striving for validation, and yet here I was, standing beside Ethan, surrounded by people who respected what we had built. It was everything I had ever wanted, and yet I knew that part of me was still tethered to that past, to their expectations. Just then, I saw her, my mother. Her eyes scanned the room before they locked onto mine. I felt my heart skip a beat, a wave of tension coursing through me as she made her way over. She was dressed in a sleek black dress, the kind of outfit that screamed authority and control, much like the woman she had always been. Her smile was tight, a practiced expression that never reached her eyes. It was a smile that always meant there was something more, something beneath the surface that she wasn't saying. And I knew that tonight it wouldn't be any different. "You've done well for yourself, Ava," she said, her voice smooth but laced with an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite pinpoint. "It's good to see you finally finding your place." I could hear the backhanded compliment, the sting of her words. It wasn't just praise, it was laced with a kind of grudging acknowledgement, as if she had been forced to admit, however reluctantly, that I had managed to carve out a life for myself. I could feel the weight of her judgment, the insinuation that this success had been unexpected, that she had doubted me all along. But I didn't flinch. I had spent so many years seeking her approval, bending over backward to meet her expectations. But not tonight. Not anymore. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. "I found my place, not because of what you expected, but because of who I am." The words felt like a release, a declaration of independence that I had never truly been able to voice until now. I wasn't the person she had tried to shape me into, and I wasn't going to apologize for that. I had found my own way, on my own terms, and I was finally at peace with that. The evening continued, but the tension between us became more apparent. My mother, ever the strategist, continued to navigate the conversation, but I could sense the subtle shift in her demeanor. She had always been the one to offer unsolicited advice, to position herself as the one who knew better, who held the keys to success. And now, even in this moment, she couldn't help but try to insert herself into my achievements. "You could make this bigger, Ava," she said, her voice dropping just enough to be heard over the crowd. "With my connections, we could." I didn't let her finish. The words came out before I had a chance to second-guess them, sharp and firm, cutting through her attempts to manipulate the situation. "No, thank you, Mother," I said, my voice resolute. "I don't need your connections. I've built this from the ground up, and I'm proud of it." There was a brief moment of silence as her words hung in the air, and I could see the discomfort on her face. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. I could feel the shift in the air, the way she tried to regroup, her facade of control slipping just for a moment. For a woman who had always held the reins of every conversation, it was jarring to see her at a loss. But I didn't feel satisfaction in her discomfort. I simply felt calm, peaceful, even. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking her approval. I wasn't waiting for her validation or longing for her praise. It was a strange, liberating feeling. The weight of the years of trying to live up to her expectations had lifted, and in its place was a quiet confidence that came from knowing I had done it on my own. I had created something meaningful, something real, and it was mine. The awkward silence stretched between us for a moment longer before my mother, ever the master of maintaining appearances, cleared her throat and forced a smile. "Well," she said, "I'm sure you'll continue to do well, Ava. After all, success is about who you know, isn't it?" The comment was veiled in politeness, but the undercurrent of condescension was unmistakable. I could feel the old familiar sting of her words, but it didn't affect me the way it once had. Instead of feeling small, I felt whole, strong. My gaze remained steady, my posture straight, and I looked her in the eye as I spoke. "It's about what you create, Mother," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "And I've created something I'm proud of. I don't need to rely on anyone's connections but my own." Her expression faltered just for a split second before she regained her composure. There was no apology, no recognition of the years of doubt and criticism. But in that moment, I didn't need it. What I had built spoke for itself. And I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all my mother, undermine that. Ethan, ever the supportive partner, gave my hand a gentle squeeze. He had watched the exchange with a calm but understanding expression, and when my mother finally turned away, he offered me a quiet smile, the kind that said everything without words. He had known how hard it had been for me, how much I had struggled to get to this point, and now he could see that I was finally free. Free from the chains of my family's expectations. Free from the need to prove myself to anyone but myself. I stood there for a moment, watching my mother retreat into the crowd, her figure a reminder of the past I had left behind. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I simply felt a quiet peace. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. As the evening wore on, I found myself surrounded by people who admired what I had created. There were no backhanded compliments, no judgmental glances, just respect, genuine admiration for the work we had done. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Not as someone's daughter, not as a woman trying to fit into a mold, but as an artist, as a businesswoman, as someone who had forged her own path. And that was enough. As the night came to a close, I walked away from my past. Not with anger, but with a sense of closure. The weight of it all, the long years of searching for validation, of chasing approval that would never come, had finally lifted. The gala, with its dazzling lights and velvet curtains, had been the last page of a chapter I'd written without even knowing it. My family had tried to break me, but instead they had propelled me forward. Every cutting remark, every failure to see me for who I was, had only made me stronger, more determined. And now, standing in the afterglow of the night, I realized that in the end, it wasn't their acceptance that mattered. What mattered was that I had found my true self. I stood there, in the quiet of the evening, looking out at the city skyline. The world below glittered like a million possibilities, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to shrink. I didn't need to second-guess myself or worry about what others thought. I was here, in this moment, on my own terms, with everything I had worked for right in front of me. Ethan stood by my side. His presence, a quiet strength I had come to rely on. He didn't say much, but in his silence, there was a comforting assurance. He had been with me through all the highs and lows, never wavering, always supporting. And now, as we stood together at the edge of a new chapter, his words were simple but full of pride. "You did it," he said, his voice soft but steady, like a steady anchor in the storm of emotions that swirled within me. "I knew you would." I turned to face him, taking in his steady, unwavering gaze. There were no grand declarations. No need for them. We didn't need words to understand what we had accomplished, what we were about to accomplish. His quiet pride was all I needed. And in that moment, I knew I did it. I had found the strength to move past the pain, to transform it into something beautiful. "Yes," I replied, my voice stronger now, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. I was calm, grounded. I had earned this peace. I did. The words hung in the air, resonating with the weight of everything I had gone through to get here. I had spent so many years fighting, struggling, yearning for something that would validate me, something that would prove my worth. But now it felt like I didn't need to prove anything. The struggle had shaped me, but it didn't define me anymore. I was so much more than the girl who had once been overlooked, underestimated. I was an artist, a businesswoman, a woman with purpose. The city stretched out before me, vast and full of possibilities. It was a reminder that there was so much more to see, to do. I had come so far, but this was just the beginning. The world was vast, and I was just getting started. There were still so many projects I wanted to explore, so many people I wanted to inspire. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time, I felt ready to embrace it all. As we stood there, taking in the view, the weight of the evening began to fade. The laughter, the conversations, the fleeting moments of tension all seemed distant now. I was no longer concerned with who had doubted me, who had walked away. They no longer had a hold on me. I was free, and that freedom was intoxicating. Ethan nudged me gently, pulling me out of my thoughts. He was always so present, always in tune with me, and I couldn't help but smile. His eyes, full of admiration and quiet affection, met mine. He had been my rock through everything. The late nights, the sleepless mornings, the doubts, the fears. He had never asked me to be anyone other than myself. And for that, I was eternally grateful. "You've come a long way, Ava," he said, his voice low and intimate. "You're not just building a business. You're building a legacy." I looked at him, his words echoing in my heart. Legacy. It was a word I hadn't really allowed myself to think about before. But now it felt right. I was building something that wasn't just about profits or recognition. I was creating something that would outlast me, something that would make a difference. This company, this art, was a part of me, but it was also something bigger. It was about creating a space for others, artists like me who had been overlooked, pushed aside, or told they weren't good enough. It was about showing the world that art could be a force for change. A way to make the world better. I nodded, taking in his words. I've only just begun, I said, the words coming easily with a conviction I hadn't known I was capable of before. We stood in silence for a few moments, the sounds of the city below us filling the space between us. The night was cool, the air crisp, and I felt a calmness settle over me. I was no longer trying to prove anything. I had arrived at a place where I could simply be, and that was enough. Are you ready for what's next? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. His voice filled with curiosity and excitement for the future. For a moment, I paused. The question hung in the air. Ready? Yes. I was ready for everything the future had to offer. Absolutely. I replied, my voice filled with certainty. The world's waiting, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of my past lift off my shoulders, leaving room for the limitless potential of the future. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was moving forward, and I knew, with Ethan by my side and the strength I had found within myself, I could face whatever came next. The world was vast, and I was just getting started. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts or any feedback you might have. Feel free to drop a comment and share your opinions. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you don't miss out on the next incredible story coming your way. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring you more stories you'll love. Thank you for sticking around and listening to today's tale. Until next time.